Luck, everyone.
Good morning or good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this very exciting discussion to come. We're very happy that some of you that are even celebrating Eid today are with us also. So happy Eid for those who are celebrating. Thank you for taking an hour and a half of your time to join this discussion. It's also a good way to celebrate Eid. Not as good as eating the sheep, but it's not bad. So thank you again for being with us. We are going to start in a little bit. We'll just give another 2 minutes for more people to join us. We wanted to open the room on time so that everybody is on the dot at 12 my time. But we will just give another 2 minutes for people to be able to and not miss the introduction that we'll get from the CEO of Adam Smith International, Mrs. Jalpa Patel, and then we'll dive into the discussion. So please just wait a couple of minutes and then we'll get started. Great. And that if everybody is ready, we can get started. So I'll please give the floor first to Mrs. Jalpa Patel so that she can make an introduction and then we'll take it back. Over to you, Jalpa.
Thank you, Astou. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. It's an absolute honour to welcome you all to our first Thought Leaders Forum. This initiative originally started as an internal ASI lunch and learn series, which we have been running for a number of years. And today we're very excited to be able to branch out to a much broader audience. And our event today marks the first public ASI Thought Leaders Forum. The purpose of this forum is to bring together diverse perspectives, share our knowledge and learn from one another. So again, a very warm welcome to you all and a big thank you to our wonderful Head of Communications, Keita Shabani, who has led the design and launch of this event. The focus of today's Thought Leaders Forum is on a very important issue, the role of women in fostering entrepreneurship in Africa. Africa really does stand out when it comes to starting new businesses. 22% of working Africans today are actively starting their own enterprises, according to the African Development Bank. And that's the highest percentage of any region in the world. Yet, unfortunately, only a small fraction of these ambitious individuals are women. And today we are here to learn why that is, what the challenges are that women face, and importantly, how they can overcome these. Today's panel has been brought together through our Boost Africa Technical Assistance facility, which is funded by the European Union and the Organisation of African, Caribbean and Pacific States through the 11th European Development Fund and is managed by the European Investment Bank. We're honoured to have an amazing panel of trailblazers, leaders who have been reshaping the narratives of women entrepreneurship in Africa. Eloho Omame, Paola Ravacchioli and Hana Maleej, who you'll hear more about in a moment, all moderated by the brilliant Astou Dia, who is portfolio lead at the Boost Africa Technical Assistance Facility. And we'll hear from them not just on the barriers that women entrepreneurs face in Africa, but we'll also delve deeper into their own personal experiences and practical strategies to address these. So please enjoy the exchange of ideas and engage in the discussion afterwards. And with that, I'll hand back over to you, Astou. And Astou will moderate today's session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alba. Thank you also for giving us the platform to actually have these conversations. And of course, as you mentioned, this is a crew that knows Boost Africa, and we'll learn a little bit more about Boost Africa and what it's doing to also promote women entrepreneurs and women fund managers. But before we do that, I would like to have a little Mentimeter just to see where everybody's coming from or dialing in from. Also to hear about what you know about women in the finance, women entrepreneurs. And so we'll just ask you a couple of questions, do a little bit of quiz, and we might even have an award, I would say, for the person who has the most points. And before we dive into the more serious discussion. So yeah, you might be on your screen a Mentimeter with questions. The first one is, where are you calling in from? And I don't know if you want to know where I am calling in from, because you might be all jealous, because I am right now in the beautiful island of Zanzibar. And it's sunny, the sea is blue, and I'm connected with you. So very good to be here. So I see we have people from London, Amsterdam, a lot of Londoners, Valencia, very nice, Greenwich, Amsterdam, Nigeria, Helsinki, Turkey, Tunis. So those are the Hana's folks and crew. Malawi, Dakar. Hey, hey, my fellow Senegalese people. Eid Mubarak to you. Who else do I see? Luxembourg, Australia. I think that might be the further and the farther. So welcome and thank you for joining us. And we can Thailand. Very good. Nice to meet you, Tina. Welcome. Great. So then we can move to the second question of our mentee. Which words come to mind when you think of female business leaders? And you can enter more than one word. But yeah, when we talk about female business leaders, what are the words that come to your mind? Future, they are the future. Courageous, indeed, not easy. Resilient. Powerhouses, and we need some more powerhouses, indeed. There's not enough of them, and that's exactly what we're going to discuss today. How do we make sure that we get this power where it needs to be so that the word can forward? Compassionate, diversity, pioneer, challenge, successful, confident, that's great, creative. And we need all those things, not only in the finance world, but actually everywhere in the world. And that's what we're going to discuss today, how or what have been the challenges for some of these women entering the finance and the investment space, what is being done for us to see more women more women entrepreneurs, and actually bring all these features to the world. And you hear about our panelists during this discussion. Great. Now a little bit of quizzes to see, we said not enough, but how not enough is it? So next questions for our mentee. And so we have 3 questions. It's a quiz, the fastest, the better. And if you get all the correct answers, you will get the maximum points. Question 1, what percent of African women founders report that their professional position or responsibility has been openly questioned because they are women? What is the percentage? So you have 3 options, 10%, 24.8, 64.5. Over to you. 64.5. That's an answer from the chat. I don't know if it's the right one. From Margaret. And yes, what do you? Most of you know it. 64.5% of women, of African women, report this. And so it's, I would say, shocking that it's more than 50. But yeah, next question. Get ready. What percent of total equity funding went to African startup with at least one female founder in 2022? And we're talking about 2022. So 72%, 13%, or 23%? 23% have it got here. Margaret? 13%. And yes, the correct answer is 13%. We wish it would be 72. We wish maybe mildly 23, but it was 13, so very low. And most of you got that right. Last question. Getting ready. What is the potential GDP in USD that could be gained across Africa if the gender investment gap is bridged? $1.1 million, $316 billion, or $53 billion? That is how much money the world could make, if we say that GDP is money, if this gender gap was bridged. 360 billion, Margaret? And it is 316 billion. So we see that there's not only a social and I would say moral need for women to be as active in the world as their counterpart, but there's actually an economical reason to it. And so we are losing money, all of us together, by not having enough women at those posts. Great. With that, again, okay. When you envision the future of entrepreneurship in Africa, what is the one word that encapsulates your vision? How do you see the future? We say that, given the statistics, we have a long way to go. What would be our envisioned future? Exponential growth, world leaders, challenging still, inclusive, that would be really good, innovation, the more inspiration, world leaders, disruptive, bold, growth, hard work, innovative way to empower others. What do I see? Potential, financing, and so forth. Well, thank you very much to everybody for participating to this quiz. I don't know if Kete will tell us who was the number one winner of the three questions, but you all were. And with that, I will now like to open the floor to our panelists. So as you know, we have three wonderful women that will be discussing with us today. I will invite them to please open their camera, and then I wouldn't do justice to any of them if I were the one to introduce them. So what I would like to do is first start with a round of introductions, starting with Paola. If you can just take the mic, introduce yourself briefly, and then, I'm going with Paola because she's our senior, and I'll just do by order of seniority. So Paola, then Eloho, then Hana. That's the only order that I'm using for this introduction. So then we'll shuffle things a little bit more. Paola, please go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. Can you hear me? Hello? Yeah?
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you well.
First of all, thank you, Adam Smith, for organizing this event. And I'm very happy to be here and talk about Boost. Since you said that I'm the senior, actually, they used to call me Meme Boost because I'm the grandmother, the Granny Boost of this initiative somehow that we started in 2015. Together with, it was a joint initiative between the African Development Bank and the European Investment Bank. And funnily enough, we started conceiving the idea, me together with other colleagues, and especially with Mariam Yeo Dembele, whom I say hello to here in case she's there, who is a colleague and a friend from the Africa Development Bank. And typically, I would say, me and Mariam were completely taken by the initiative, which was aiming at developing the nascent industry of venture capital in sub-Saharan Africa, also in Northern Africa, but there were more funds already being financed there, and no venture capital fund was being financed in sub-Saharan Africa by DFIs outside of South Africa, which wasn't in the investment scope because too developed. And what happened is when we started off, we just dived into doing the work, all the groundwork of Boost Africa, conceiving the concept, trying to get money from the European Commission for a blending, negotiating the contracts, and most importantly, appraising the funds and selecting funds and doing the appraisal and looking for approval within our institution for the investment in these funds. And is it coincidence that out of 6 funds that were that were appraised by Boost Africa at the start, 2 of them were completely founded by women and had so women founders. Another 2 had founding partners that were women, and there were only 2 that were all men teams. And me and Mariam, we appraised the 4 which had women founders and women co-founders in them. And of these 4, 2 of them managed actually to raise, because it's not always easy for first-time fund managers to raise a fund, especially if this fund is investing in frontier markets, in more fragile economies, and especially if it's focusing on the earliest stages of the entrepreneurial journey, so in very early tech companies so out of these 4, which were approved by our institutions, 2 managed to find to close the fundraising and start investing. One of them, the first one was Telkom Tide, where out of 2 co-founding partners, there were 2 fantastic women, Omobola Johnson from Nigeria and Andreata Muforo from Zimbabwe. And the fund has done very, very well, funding among the most incredible startups and impactful startups in Africa, like Andela, Twiga, just to name it two. And the second fund, which I'm very, very fond of, is Django, a capital startup fund, which is a fund that not only invests in very early stage tech startups in Africa, but also when it doesn't find the startup that is addressing a market gap that it thinks is important to address, it creates the company. So it acts like a seed fund and a venture studio at the same time. And I mention this because out of the companies that were actually created within Django Capital, all of them were they created the startup, and then they found a CEO, and for all of them they put women CEOs. And it's not a coincidence, because Django was founded by an extraordinary woman who very young and very impressive entrepreneur and fund manager who's called Fatoumata Ba from Senegal. And wherever she has put women at the helm of the companies, we have seen an extraordinary growth. These women have grown the companies in different sectors and have grown them very fast, and the companies are very solid. So all of this to tell you that I think it's important to invest in women funds where you have women founders, partners, because these women partners will also be able to have a gender lens when they invest and start really changing the whole perception of women entrepreneurs, and through success stories. I think the success stories is what is going to really move the dial towards investment in women entrepreneurs, and because they have very special qualities, which we will talk about later.
Thanks a lot, Paola. I would like to hear, because you mentioned also that the fund that you appraised, most of them were also, at least 4 out of 6 had a female presence. And I would like to hear maybe from Eloho, because you also mentioned the TLCOM. And Eloho is one of the partners of TLCOM, but she decided to launch First Check Africa. So Eloho, can you tell us a little bit more about this, I would say, venture, and even before First Check Africa, how it has been for you actually becoming a partner at one of the largest investment funds?
Hi, sure, happy to. Can I having a couple of challenges in my connectivity. I want to make sure you can hear me okay. Yes?
We can hear you.
Okay.
So far, so good.
Okay.
When it drops,
okay, good. I got one of those messages saying, your connection is not great. So, okay. So my name is Eloho Omame. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And this is a topic I can talk about all day. I'll try not to do that on this occasion. As you referenced already, I'm a partner at TLCOM Capital. TLCOM Capital is an Africa-focused venture capital fund, a very proud investee of the Boost Africa program. We are now on our second fund. I joined in the last 15 months or so as a partner. We're now in our second fund and managing across both funds just over between $200 and $250 million of capital into high growth technology focused companies in Africa. In our first fund, we already talked about Andela, Twiga Foods, a couple of other investments that we're quite proud of. And those investments spanned ultimately Nigeria and Kenya for the most part. It's very exciting now that we've started to deploy capital into South Africa and Egypt out of our second fund. Very much the same thesis, and quite an exciting time, I think, to be joining TLCOM, or to be part of the TLCOM team. As you referenced as well, I'm a co-founder of First Check Africa, which is one of those first-time funds that Paola just referenced, focused on female founders exclusively, and also focused in the very early days. So I have a lot of respect for what the Django team are doing. I suppose we're a little bit different in that, as much as we are both, it sounds like, focused on quite early stage companies, we don't play that venture building role. We have a different sort of thesis around how we support founders, and typically it's around, they come to us with established companies, we invest in those companies, and then we support them, I'm sure, in many of the same ways as Django probably does, because this road is quite difficult for women. And so we always want to sort of roll up our sleeves and be critical to support them across a bunch of different areas. So it's very exciting to be on that journey too. It's a very hard thing to be trying to do. In general, I'm also pretty busy, I suppose, in the tech ecosystem here in Nigeria. I'm a member of a few things around the ecosystem, but in particular, a recent council that has been set up here in Nigeria under our new Startup Act, whereby we are looking at initiatives and looking at strategies around supporting the venture ecosystem in the country. So I'm pretty excited to be here, and thanks again for the invite.
Thank you so much to you, Eloho. And now moving to Hene. So Hene is part of the Africa Invest team. She has been working in investment banking before. And actually, I think that even when not only talking about investment fund, but also other finance areas, there are also challenges when it comes to having women represented, women on the top. So Hannah, maybe can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your experience on that front?
Yes. Hi, hope you can hear me also. Again, thanks for the invite. I'm so honored to be part of this panel with Paola and Eloho. So yes, I was working in the investment banking space, and kind of recently joined the VC space. I joined the Kate Africa Invest Innovation Fund in November 2022, which is the VC arm of Africa Invest. Africa Invest is a Pan-African investment platform. We have several funds on private equity, VC, private debt, and asset management activities. And so as Astou said, I I can make some parallel with what I had or experienced when I was working on a European broker. I was a financial analyst at a European broker covering multi-sector small caps. And the first thing that I noticed and that surprised me when I joined Odo, which is the broker I was working with, I noticed that there were only few women in the equity research department and no woman at all in my team. So I was the first one to join, and there was not even female interns. So it was really surprising. And when I started evolving in my career, my position, I started doing marketing campaigns to talk about my topic lists with investors. It was mainly in France and in Germany. And I was also surprised to see, I was surprised by two things. First, there was only few women as asset managers within these funds first. And I was also surprised to see the reaction of investors when they saw me as a woman coming to talk them through my investment cases and to be challenged by them. And so in the beginning, like it was during the whole meeting, they were like staring at you, waiting at what you were going to say. So yeah, I kind of felt uncomfortable in the beginning, but then once you do your job, they see that you are competent, talented, and like they kind of start acting normal, I would say, if I was a man. And I also had some like kind of incidents with my colleagues from other departments. For example, when I was working on an IPO, usually when you work on an IPO, you will have two analysts, one lead and one backup. And once I was the lead analyst on working on the IPO of a company, and then one sales guy, he was always interacting with the backup analyst, which was a boy, instead of interacting with me. And even if I was the one answering all the questions, I must say that in the beginning I felt offended, and then I had to send him an email to make it clearer. But it was like a difficult step for me because I was like afraid to create like an incident within the team, and it was someone I was working with. And so yeah, overall it wasn't really a good experience for me. And now when I think about it, it kind of makes me smile. But I remember that at that time it wasn't really funny at all. So yes, and I guess that even in investment banking, or usually in the whole finance world, you will see a big lack of women in this space.
Thank you very much, Hana, for sharing these experiences and also really giving us practical, I would say, examples of how it manifests in the rooms and the meeting rooms. I was going to go to Eloho, but I think that she might have a connection issue. And maybe, Paola, going back to you, it's what do you think is the role of development finance institution, DFIs, when it comes to, I would say, pushing the needle and really changing the perceptions in those investment room, whether it is the DFIs investing into fund manager, or is it even fund manager investing into entrepreneurs? What needs to be done to change the perception and the reality, and what is the role that those DFIs can play in that?
I think DFIs have a very important role to play. DFIs, we know, have deep pockets, so they can make sizable investments in the fund. And when a DFI invests in a fund, it gives a clear signal to the market because of the very strict and thorough due diligence, which is usually carried out by DFIs, not only on the financial but operational and also ESG level. So DFIs, when they invest, they catalyze investment by others. So it's so important to have DFIs invest in women-led, women-founded, or teams where women are partners, because that gives a very clear sign to the market. And what I have seen in the last 10 years, I've worked for the European Investment Bank for 24 years and left in 2019, so I'm retired now, but I keep in touch with what is going on in different DFIs through my work. What I see is that they are elaborating the gender strategy, all of the DFIs actually, in different ways, but going into the right direction, I think. A gender strategy that is more and more comprehensive. It's not, before we were counting how many women-led fund, how many women jobs are created, how many women are promoted and leadership, and it was more a counting thing. Now we're really going into, we have criteria that are developed to incorporate the gender due diligence into the financial due diligence. That is to say that you really look deeper into the entity you're investing in. And well, for a DFI, it's the fund, and then the fund has to also transfer these requirements also when they invest in the underlying companies, in the portfolio companies. And what I have seen in different criterias are going really at the level of representation, board representation of women, promotion, equality in the hiring and promotion policies of the investing companies, how to reduce the risk of discrimination in the supply chains, etc., etc. So there is really research into how can we do a qualitative analysis that will really move the needle much, much more in depth. So I think this is a very good sign, and I think that the signaling effect of DFIs is very, very important in the gender, in increasing investment in women investors, fund managers, and also in women entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Paola. And maybe, Eloho, if you can hear us, being on the other side, so the one fundraising, and Anna, I'll get back to you also as well. So the one fundraising, how do you see, first, do you see that signaling effect? Is it working? And then there's also recent studies that mention that maybe the signaling effect or the gender investing can actually be a problem, especially for entrepreneurs, but do you also see it or feel it as you are a female fundraiser?
Sure, happy to comment. I will try 1 second with my camera on. Tell me if it ruins the experience completely, and I'll switch it back off. Okay. Absolutely, I think it's very interesting when you think about the role of DFIs within an ecosystem. I think Paola is spot on when she says that, in particular, if you're a first-time fund manager, the signal of having DFIs support your first fund is a very, very strong one. There's a very high bar for diligence. The process can, I suppose, sometimes take a little bit longer than if you were, talking to private sources of capital. But all of that, I think, indicates a level of resilience and seriousness about the firm that you're building. And typically it's a very strong sign. I've switched off the camera now. I thought a sign from Paola. So, so I think absolutely at the fund manager level. I think for the DFIs, it's also an interesting journey. I remember being in a call with a UK DFI who I won't say which one, but I remember being in a meeting and we were having a very interesting discussion about sort of thinking about the catalyzing effect that DFIs are intended to play within ecosystems. And there was lots of questions around whether or not I had a perspective, and those of us in the room as fund managers had a perspective on whether or not Africa had reached that inflection point whereby the DFIs might be able to step back and have private capital then fill that gap. So DFIs play this really interesting role whereby there's that initial signaling effect and support within the ecosystem. And then after a while, of course, when the ecosystem is, I suppose, more self-sustaining, you'll find that DFIs want to then sort of support other ecosystems, right, and potentially step back. So I think it's a very, very important role. On the entrepreneur side, I think you are spot on when you sort of talk about a negative signal, not obviously from the DFI side, but I think in this case you're referring to female-focused funds and female entrepreneurs. And female entrepreneurs end up in this really difficult catch-22, right? Whereby we've talked about some of the numbers already this morning. The amount of capital that's coming into female-led companies is not where we would like it to be. And there's a very important role then that female-focused funds like First Check Africa, etc., are playing in the ecosystem to support these entrepreneurs. But we also see that the data says that for female entrepreneurs, you want to be very strategic and quite careful, because if you pursue certain kind, too much, quote unquote, and who knows what that number is, but too much of certain kinds of capital, then it starts to send a signal to the ecosystem that, quote unquote, mainstream capital isn't really supportive of the venture that you're trying to build. It's a catch-22 for sure. It's frankly, I think it's a bit pejorative where female founders are concerned. So that is a very real conversation that we need to have. But you'll see it in the data. I think there was an interesting report that was published sometime last year, and I forget the source, but it was basically saying that what tends to happen is that people read the signal as, if you're only able to raise from female-led funds, then you're receiving some kind of capital that is perhaps a little bit more favorable and not necessarily focused on the fundamentals. So there are many challenges that we need to resolve on the fund manager side and on the female, frankly, on the fund manager side, around how we support female entrepreneurs, around some of the negative signals that I think, unfortunately, the women suffer if we're not careful about the strategies that we deploy, etc., etc. But I think there's a really important role for our funds to play, and I think the game and the job around making sure that we are viewed very much as meaningful capital, mainstream capitals, etc., etc., is ours as fund managers, rather than the role of the entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much, Eloho. And maybe then asking Hana on you. So CAIF is not a female-only and female-focused fund, but there is really intentionality in making sure that you do invest in women-led businesses. How do you do it? And how difficult, I would say, or not difficult actually, is it to do investment and to present them as, I would say, something that is mainstream and not necessarily a gender-focused investment?
Yes. Thank you. Hope you can hear me. Yes. So on the first on the fundraising side, so I wasn't here when they fundraised for CAIF or other funds, but from what I discussed with my colleagues, it really depends on the vis-a-vis. Usually with DFIs, as said Eloho and Paola, so there's no specific like challenges with this regards. They are very oriented towards gender balance, etc. But with it can be more difficult when you are addressing like high net worth individuals or family offices, and I think also it can be more difficult for someone who is raising a whole like a new fund from scratch. While as regards with African Invest, we had like the African Invest strong relationship network with a large number of investors, and it was like probably more easier for them to raise with the backup of the whole African Invest platform. But more generally, I mean, the question that comes up more often is that when investing, are women not being funded or not enough seeking funding? But I think it's kind of both. First, we definitely need more women-led businesses in our channel to invest in. At African Invest, we received like 2,000 deals in our pipeline, but less than 2% of these companies have female-led CEOs. So this is one first problem. And on the other hand, you will have generally men tend to invest in people in the same gender, educational background, etc. So even though they might not really discriminate intentionally, there is some unconscious bias. But the thing is that you also have like an issue with female investors because they need to fight more or harder to be taken seriously as female founders, that they want to support leading female projects, and so yes, we are working on that. Within the team, we have three female people within the investment team. So yeah, we kind of try to look at more female-led projects, and yes, because we think that this is first our responsibility as women to promote more women, but also we saw that you can have more successful projects when they are led by women. So, and of course, successful projects will be successful for the fund, and the success of the fund will lead to successful other fundraisings for other funds. So I think we need to work on that to implement like a virtuous cycle. And yes, so that's what what
But
I
then,
had to
Hannah,
say.
it feels like for me there is the kind of a disconnect, I would say, between maybe in this group of gender
Sorry.
aware and gender. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Now, can you hear me well?
Okay.
Sorry, I
Yes,
got
I
cut.
can hear you. No, you're here. We can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna following up on what you said and also reflecting on the numbers that we saw at the beginning of when we were doing the poll. It seems like there's still a disconnect between the intention and the gender aware people that know that investing in women makes sense and makes financial sense, and then the reality. When you see that only 13% of them receive the funding, then why this disconnect and what needs to be done, and where do we need to hit the nail to make sure that yes, we get to the 72% in terms of that we had in the poll. So maybe asking both of you and starting maybe with Paola, what else? Okay, Eloho, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Whoever wants to jump, because yes,
sure, I'll let Hannah start, and then I can contribute.
Yes. What I think is that first you need to have more women. I think what has to be done is from the top management level first, because they have the power to empower women. They can make a difference, even if in terms of the management within the funds or even within the investment team. So, like as I said, it's like virtuous cycle that can be done. That can be implemented. Also, I think that women we need to help each other, because we can make a difference. Even it's harder for now for us now, but I think we can make a difference if we work together. And also, for example, at the African Invest level, we when we started like a long time ago, of course we had we were focused on having the best people hiring the best profiles, and we tried to have this diversity even in terms of color or gender, but also in terms of origin or religions. Now we have 20 nationalities as of June 2022. And we are 2x compliant, so we have more than 40% women within the team, and we have 44% women within the team, and more than 40% and around 40% within the investment team. And we have like 3 women in the partnership in the partner level. So, and we tried like to work within the African Invest team first to have more women in place. For example, in early 2000, we had the head of Morocco was a woman. In mid 2000, we had the head of Nigeria was a woman, while the operations in Kenya were run by a man. And at that time, we did not have a gender-focused hiring process, but over time we worked on it. And now we intentionally change our HR process. We target for a higher share of female during the recruitment processes. We have developed relationship with universities across Africa to ensure that the internship pipeline is balanced and strong, because this will be the pool of for our future recruitment. Like we and even as I said, from a performance perspective, we cannot say directly as yet, but IFC reports to date that women-led companies are performing 25% better than those led by women. So if it's the case, we are on the right track. So yes, you need to implement the strategy within the fund first. Try to have more women. You will have a lot of challenges because because even if you only have the policies in place, you need to have the culture, the mindset of people that want to promote women and to invest more in women-led companies, and you will also have like a positive sign when you have women. They are more open or able to understand women-led projects, I would say. So this is also can be a positive factor. We work within the team of African Invest, but we also had some initiatives within the portfolio companies, implementing some TAs or even working in partnership with other external consultants for portfolio companies. Like we tried to make the same parallel that we implemented within the fund to our portfolio companies. We worked with, for example, the InstaDeep, which is an AI company in equalizing average monthly salaries by gender. We also played a key part in increasing the number of management positions held by women in Prime Bank, which is a tier 2 Kenyan commercial bank. We increased it by 30% with over 60% of management roles held by women for this company. On the TA side, we worked with Fidelity Bank Ghana, where we conduct a sex disaggregated analysis on women-owned SMEs across all products to identify trends and in women banking experience and tailor the product to make it adapted to their needs. So yes, we have several examples with also Move, which has developed an AI credit scoring mechanism to screen women clients and help them to get access to products and services more easily. So yes, I think we need to work within all the levels, and that when we have women at all levels, we can help each other and try to move forward and improve things.
Super. And the point is not to overpower men, huh? We just want to get the percentage a little bit higher. But yeah, Eloho, you wanted to chime in on that, and then Paola.
Sure. I just wanted to double click on something that Hannah mentioned, and I sort of tend to describe it as a mainstreaming effect, which I think is pretty critical. And what I mean by that is, if you think about the challenge, I think your question was fundamentally, we see the numbers and we see the intent, but the two things one doesn't seem to be moving the other necessarily as quickly as we'd like it to be. And the way that I think about that is, it's a really complex issue, right? There's something around supporting more women to start companies. So you want more female-led companies. Then you want those more female-led companies to attract more capital. But you want them to attract more capital, not just at the very early stages, but you want them to be able to attract capital across their entire life cycle. And then, there's a last effect, which I'm particularly interested in, which is you want those companies and the founders behind those companies to emerge, as role models, right, within their various ecosystems. You want that when people mention the entrepreneurs that inspire them in Africa, for example, the list of 10 has a significant proportion of women in that, for example. So I think about the number of the things that we need to do as being along multiple stages and multiple steps, and then having an outcome, which is, of course, that the companies are scaled, the companies create significant value, and the entrepreneurs themselves are inspiring other women and young women within the ecosystem. And so to do all of that, two things. I think there's time. So it's a long game, but it's also quite a complex game, because at the very early stages, what we have at the moment is, I think we have not enough, because I think in general there's not enough capital coming into the Africa ecosystem, but we have initiatives that are designed to sort of, I suppose, meet a lot of women that are coming into the ecosystem where they are, which is, those companies tend to be very, very early. And so there are many initiatives around supporting entrepreneurs to build their companies and to start their companies and to go from what we call pre-seed to seed. I looked at the data about a year ago, and there's something, the funnel is pretty stark. Something like, if you look at the number of entrepreneurs that have raised pre-seed, early stage capital, and you follow that across the entire life cycle, you find that it drops very, very quickly between, call it post-seed, right? You go from something like, maybe factor of 10, 9 times, 10 times the volume of companies are raising at that stage. But if you go further up and you look at immediately from Series A, there's barely any female-led companies. And then you start to look beyond that to Series B, Series C, very quickly you get to 0 female-led companies, right? Depending on what stage you're talking about. So the point I'm making is that I think there's something around the mainstream effect that we still need to do, and we still need to figure out as an ecosystem. And what does that mean? It means that even when you have the female-led funds, for example, or female-focused funds, I beg your pardon, that are focused on those companies at the very early stages, we as fund managers also need to be building the networks and the relationships and the connectivity and the visibility that means that even though my pre-seed female focused fund might only be managing $10 million of capital and is therefore not able to follow too many companies along the life cycle, I am able to play a very strategic role in supporting my founders to then access capital from the larger funds over the life. And the larger funds tend to then also be able to support companies over multiple rounds. I think that if we're able to make that connection, whereby we're able to play a more mainstream role in helping our founders journey from that very early stage fundraising to later on in their lives and over time. And we really focus on those high quality relationships, those larger funds. You know, I would mention some of the African Invest funds, for example. I suppose I'm lucky enough that I'm sort of a partner at TLCom. So it means that I'm able to sort of, make some connections there. There are a few other funds, there are many other funds as well. The point I'm making is there's that journey, and I think the handing off effect and the mainstreaming effect is one that we need to be very conscious of. Otherwise, we end up in this dynamic whereby we fund the companies and we fund the women, but they're somewhat stuck. After a while, they're not able to access capital from some of these other funds. And I think it's a critical role that we can talk to the entrepreneurs about the visibility and we can support them to do it. But it's actually a role that as fund managers, in particular, female fund managers that have that access, we can also do the work to try and support the women much more as we go through the journey. And not as a criticism, but more as a strategy. It's a really interesting one. We kind of have to pull people more across the funnel in very, I think, active ways.
Thank you so much, Eloho. And then just before passing on to Paola, I'd just like to remind our people that are listening that, yes, I have been driving the questions so far, but you will have the occasion to ask your questions in 5 to 7 minutes, and we'll open the floor for Q&A. But yes, Paola, your perspective, and maybe your perspective also on that point about being stuck, like the people that are the catalytic funding or catalytic funders can, at the end of the day, be your prison, I would say. How do we change that perception and make sure that there is sustainability after that catalytic funding or support?
So thank you. I completely agree with Eloho on the way she looks at time and complexity, because I think that is something which is very important if you really want to be able to understand how to move the dial. What we have in Africa is a huge informal sector, and women are hugely overrepresented in this informal sector. So we're talking about micro companies where you have women who struggle every day to make these companies live and to access finance. Now, what I have seen in the funds, especially in the funds with female partners and female founders, who invest in female entrepreneurs, what I have seen that these female entrepreneurs, many who are very successful, what they have as a specificity is they have this deep understanding of the dynamics of networking dynamics and all the dynamics of the informal sector. And they create actually services and products, platforms that provide tools for micro and small companies, often women-led, to become, tools that enable them to do business better, that enable them to reach more customers, that enable them to, through logistic services for low-income companies to send their goods, that enable them to access the goods themselves from providers at a lower cost, and administer the companies with innovative tools. So little by little become digitized and little by little grow. So I think it's the whole chain, I think, is very interesting, how women investors are able to spot and select the women founders, entrepreneurs who have not only the leadership qualities that are not easily spotted by men, because we have a different way of presenting ourselves. Often women have huge leadership qualities, but they don't really show them like this at the surface, you know. But then if you put them at work, they do wonders, you know. And it takes a woman to the leader to spot another woman leader. And these women entrepreneurs, they often try to address the market failures and market gaps where you have which actually help women. If you address them, that help women move forwards from the very micro companies and then growing the companies to bigger ones and then moving up the scale. And you know, moving away from impact finance to mainstream finance, you know, because they are great and because the women are able to create fast growing and great companies if they're giving the chance. So I don't know if I explained it well, but I think it's really, there is a value chain of investment here, whereby women investors enable women entrepreneurs who are able to address the informal and enable the informal sector at scale, and really cater for the needs of this sector. And then we will see more micro companies moving up the scales, and some of them becoming then very successful companies that enter the mainstream finance. But it's a matter of time. Yes, I think it will take time still, but the ball is rolling. I think it's unstoppable. I think the whole process has started, and the only thing we can do is invest in more women from the FIs, investing and always investing in women down the chain. And the success stories will really and also we need to showcase the success stories. I think that's also very important.
Well, thank you so much to the three of you. I think that's something that really cuts across everything that you've said. It is a continuum. It is a continuum, and there's no need to just act at one point. There is a need to think about the whole, either we call it value chain, ecosystem, whatever, but from top down or bottom up. But the action needs to happen everywhere, and the way we are consciously and intentionally posing the steps or the action at each step is what is going to lead to this. I like the unstoppable ball that is rolling and rolling and rolling. And so hopefully the next time we talk, maybe not next year's, but the next time we talk, the percentage will be 72. So now I would like to open the floor for our participants. They are not able to open their microphones, but they're definitely invited to ask their question either through the chat or using, there's a new feature that I learned about on Teams. There's a Q&A button where you can just click on and then put in your question. So over to you, dear audience. Hana, Paola, and Eloho are listening or reading your questions. If you have no question, I will continue. And I have many in stores. Okay. Are you being shy? There's a few. Kitty, please go ahead. There's one question. So there are quite a few setbacks on this long journey, despite the ball rolling and being unstoppable. So in the face of these challenges, where do you draw your inspiration and drive? Can you share a personal story that reflects this? So whoever wants to share a personal story about this ball that is rolling and that is going to be unstoppable. Paola, I've already told you.
Well, perhaps the story of Boost is perhaps informative. In that story, in our investment team, at the time we were only 2 women and I think 5 male investment professionals. We were doing fund-of-fund investment, and typically the male were doing big, very profitable funds, private equity, whatever, and typically we women we're more interested in how do we promote first-time team, how do we promote, how do we open up new markets, how do we do the difficult things, the small, risky, time-consuming investments that are actually, if they succeed, are the most rewarding one for us. And what happened is that we were a bit mocked within the team, yes, the impact thing, yes, there's a Boost, whatever. And then actually it became not only a success story for our institutions, the Boost, but it also attracted many more DFIs investing in that sector. They didn't want in the beginning, but now it's like mainstream to invest in venture capital and in Africa. And among all these investments, I think one of the most inspiring stories that I have seen coming out of Boost has been during the COVID times. One of our funds was the Django Fund. Just realized that it was going to be very difficult for Africa to attract medical equipment, for African countries to attract medical equipment because it was so rare. There was not enough masks, not enough machines, for breathing, etc., on the global market. And how would small countries like Cape Verde or Seychelles be able to attract any of these, and the vaccines when they came, actually, how were they going to be able to do this on a market that perceived African countries as perhaps risky, not really paying, ordering small quantities, etc.? And so the one of our fund managers, decided they had the skill within their team to just create a platform where African countries could aggregate the orders, and 54 countries joined on this platform, which is called the African Medical Supplies Platform. And it was a tremendous success during COVID time because African countries were able to source and order in bulk at scale and at a much lower price than actually anybody could, and get the logistics. So the logistics was being solved also by these bulk orders, and then distribute among the countries. And after COVID, this has become now a platform that sources medical supply for a number of different health needs throughout Africa. And it's a huge success, not only as a company, although it started out off as a non-for-profit, now it's hugely profitable, but it's, even though the prices stay very, very low, but it has been really something that moved the needle for the healthcare sector in Africa, and that is doing this increasingly so. And this company was founded by a woman and is being managed by a woman, and it makes me happy. It makes me happy to see this. This is what inspires me, is these stories. You don't start with the idea of shareholders' profit. No, you start with the idea of a huge need, something that, and an injustice, something which is not fair. Why shouldn't these countries be able to access, the medical equipment like or vaccines like anyone else? And then all of a sudden, 220 million vaccines were sourced by the platform. These are the things that inspire me every day to continue working to promote women entrepreneurship in the world.
Super. Thanks a lot, Paola. And I think it might also tie a little bit to the next question, which is a question from William. How do you solve the pipeline problem faster and more efficiently? So, as you mentioned, how do you get more women-led businesses to actually even send their proposal and business plans to potential funders? And so that may be a question not only for you, but also for Hana. How do you think we can get more women to get not only into the entrepreneurial journey, but actually to be confident that they can go and raise the funds from the investors, such as yourself?
We need to definitely screen larger. I mean, to have a look, to leverage all the network, not to count only on events or incoming calls. You need to go to deep dive on the within the different regions in Africa. I think you need to have a local presence there to be deeply in touch with the whole ecosystem in each region, and to look for women-led companies and to screen larger, because within the pipeline, as I said, less than 2% of what we have is women-led companies. So you need to look for them because they are under the scope, because they do not have access to some who cannot leverage on their network. So yes, and I think even the startups between themselves. So one founder can recommend another founder, and so on. So I think we really need to be more exhaustive and to look at different sources or different sourcing channels to get more women-led projects.
Mm-hmm. And I think that your answer also touches on Hana, because there's another question from Anne that is about how do we also broaden the pool so that the founders or the companies don't have to compete for female talent and look for very tiny areas. So maybe any perspective from either you or Paola on how do we build also more female presence especially in sectors in which traditionally they are not, so that once again we can make the cake bigger. Any perspective if you have?
Well, just very shortly, one thing that I have noticed in the last years has been that there are more and more venture builders, so venture studios that are being created and are emerging in Africa. And I'm very happy to see that all of the ones that I have seen had women founders among the founders or were just women founded. So venture studios are companies that build startups. And I think the fact of having these women at the helm of these venture studios will also help source more women entrepreneurs and women CEOs for the startups that are being built within the studios, and create high growth companies and tech-based companies that are led by women, creating the pipeline for the funds that then will invest in the later stages. Now, just to add one thing is that we need to bring DFIs to invest or support financially these venture studios. This is something that I'm working on and is not yet given. So how do you finance them? Because it takes a lot of money to create startups, because you need the resources, you need very skilled people in the team, in the studio team. So how do we bring DFIs and other investors to invest in the startup studios? This is my question, and this is something that I'm working on, and that if anyone afterwards has ideas or whatever, reach out to me, please, because we are working with a few studios on that.
Well, we are really hoping that Boost Africa will include support to those type of structures, because as you say, also the market and the ecosystem in Africa is not the same. So we do need more support into getting entrepreneurs and female-led enterprises onto the market, so that they can access the capital that is available and ready to be invested in them. And maybe to that end, there is a question from Lucy. How many of the DFIs are from the global north, and is there an imbalance? And how does this imbalance affect local innovation and local impact when we talk about Africa? That's one question, and maybe also ties to another one, which is, from your perspective, where do we see the most innovative national policies or initiatives that are enabling entrepreneurship and women-led, female-led entrepreneurship to grow? So both to you or Hannah, whoever wants to take it.
Yes, definitely. We have more DFIs, European DFIs, I would say. So unfortunately, in terms of investors willing to invest in Africa, we have less African, I would say, corporates or financial institutions willing to invest in funds in Africa. But yes, this is one thing that we want to work on, is try to diversify the base of investors for our future funds. But I don't know how historically it has been structured like this. Maybe Paola can chime on that. So yes, but we have a lot of what we are seeing now is that we have a lot of interest coming from first corporates, but also Asian institutions, corporates and institutions. So this is something that maybe we can try to leverage for the futures for the future for Africa. So yeah, that's it on the first question.
And maybe on the second one also, being and working on the continent, Hannah, where do you see, either in terms of countries or areas, where we see more intentionality and action being made for a more conducive and enabling environment for entrepreneurs in general, but women in particular?
In terms of entrepreneurship, yeah, we had a lot of things being done in Tunisia, for example, with the Startup Act. So one of our senior partners participated in the Startup Act for Tunisia. We see a lot of things moving forward, but sometimes it depends on the vertical or the sector. I mean, we've seen a lot of things in Nigeria, in Morocco also. A lot of things being done in North Africa, in Egypt also. So, but it depends on the vertical, I would say. What else? In East Africa also we have a lot of initiatives. Yeah.
Super. Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. Paola, sorry.
Yes. On the second part of the question, exactly what Hannah says. We have more and more governments that realize that empowering the private sector in the private capital sector, private capital englobing all the investment, private, extremely important for the economy. And so I have seen many very good initiatives, not only in Tunisia with the Startup Act, but also in Senegal, in Ivory Coast, and other Francophone countries, which were a bit lagging behind in terms of venture capital when looking at Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, etc. So I see that countries are looking at successful initiatives in other countries and trying to replicate them with also very important thing is that there is an involvement of the public sector, which realizes that you need more conducive laws and rules, and you need to enable investors and enable also the entrepreneurs with a more conducive ecosystem. And so you need really to act at different levels. And this is being understood and this is being done. So I see this as a positive evolution. If we think that the amount of capital in startups and venture capital funds in 2019, I think it was around a few 100,000 million, and now in 2021 it was 5.2 billion. You see that there is really like a huge growth. So I think this is important, and I think also there is embedded in all this a consciousness that you need really to apply a gender lens as much as possible. This is also something that is embedded in this, and I think it's going. And about DFIs, yes, of course, most DFIs come from Europe. It's the developmental financial institutions of different countries, and they are trying to promote the economic development in emerging markets. And these DFIs, and you have so the few multilateral DFIs, which are not linked to one country, but it's initiatives of several countries getting together, like the African Development Bank, the European Investment Bank, IFC, which is the investment arm of the World Bank. All of them are trying to do the same thing. And not only are they trying to invest and promote, but big banks, they try to do it in a sustainable way, but they are also actively, and lately so more actively, trying to promote the most fragile economies as well and bring them on board. Like there are now initiatives to promote investment in frontier markets where several DFIs join together to do this. So I think they are trying very hard to do something that makes sense in Africa, and it's not easy, but they are trying to do it better and better. And I think we must help with everything we can, to give them input, to give them good stories, and really to try to get DFIs to look a bit further and further in how they can have a positive action. They're a bit used to doing the same things, and we need to enlarge the scope.
Definitely, and I think that this type of conversation actually really help in terms of seeing how the I would say not only the ecosystem is changing, but also what the changes, or what are the changes that are needed from either side for more impact to be realized. And just Paola, you were mentioning in terms of countries that are very intentional. I'm happy to cite Senegal as one of them.
We lost
not only on the public side. Oh, am I breaking up?
You broke up a little bit. You said you mentioned, and then I didn't hear the rest.
No, I said when you were mentioning the countries, you mentioned Côte d'Ivoire and Senegal. And I was saying that I'm really proud to say that Senegal is definitely one of the countries that is being very intentional in promoting entrepreneurship for not only for male, but also for women. And that in addition to the national and I would say public initiatives, there are also private initiatives, such as the one of Women Investment Club that is both in Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire, that are really, I would say, showing the way in terms of women supporting women building other women entrepreneurs, and not only building them capacity, but also investing in them. So yeah, that's just one example to answer to that question. With that words and the publicity for Senegal, invest in Senegal, I will now just open the floor to Paola and Hana for last words, and really thanking you for the time that you have spent with us today. Eloho had to excuse herself, but she also thanks all the participants, and she was really happy to contribute. But yeah, Paola, Hana, any last words, and then we will wrap it up, and I can let you go back to Eid for those who are celebrating.
As you wish, Paola. You want me to go first, or?
Yeah, let's do the junior first this time. We started with the senior, with the junior first.
Fair enough. Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me, and it was an honor to be part of this discussion. Yeah, just maybe as a conclusion. So, as you mentioned, I think it's a long-term journey that we have ahead of us. Things are on track. We need to keep up the good work. We need to work together to try to do the best we can to encourage women to launch innovative projects, try to promote women within the investment teams, to try to invest more in women-led projects. So yes, I think we are on the good track, and I think we can hopefully say in few years that we will have different figures, as you said, Astou. So yes, fingers crossed, and I think we should see a lot of positive things coming on despite of the challenges, and that's it.
Thank you, Hana.
Thank you.
And yes, a last word to say that I encourage all the women out there that are part of this group today, you know, to never lose faith. Just if you have a vision, follow it, because you know, it only takes, you shouldn't listen to what anyone says. Just do your thing, and all of a sudden you see that the good ideas are the ones that can be realized in the world. And we are very practical. Women are very practical, and as you say, Hana, we're good at working in team. We love working in a team and get the things done, and we don't spend too much time talking about what we do, but we spend more time doing it. So sometimes people will perhaps take away rob your work and say that they're doing it. It doesn't matter. You continue doing it, because in the end, people will know who did it, and the things, once they are out there in the world, they just snowball into something bigger that is going to become a reality and change the life of a lot of people. And the only good thing in life is to try to make this world a better place. So, and I think we women are very good at that. So that's my last words.
I love that. We women are very good at that. I agree. And so, Paola, you also have the thanks from Antonia, who is saying thank you from Django, as you say, Hora. So, yeah, thank you very much, ladies. Thank you, Paola. Thank you, Hana. Thank you, Eloho. Thank you for spending the time, for sharing wisdom. We will definitely meet again in many other meetings and gatherings. But I think that, as Paola said, let's just keep on working, and then the impact will be realized. Thank you very much, Adam Smith International, for hosting us. And this was From Unseen to Unstoppable. I think I'm going to steal this title. Please don't put any copyright on it, but I like it. From Unseen to Unstoppable. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a wonderful day. Great Eid again for those celebrating, and see you very soon.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.